The jungle world of Zephora 4 was alive with sound. Giant insects hummed in the trees, their wings glowing faintly under the twin suns. Strange birds with 3 wings sang deep-throated calls that echoed across the valley. The air itself felt heavy, filled with mist and pollen, making every breath thick and warm. To most creatures, this world was paradise. To the unprepared, it was a death trap. The Velari Dominion had sent an expedition to this planet. Their mission was not war, not conquest, but research. They wished to study Zephora's unique ecosystem, to catalog its plants and creatures, and, most importantly, to gather data on the rumored apex predators that ruled the planet's food chain. The Velari were not a species built for combat. They were tall, thin, with smooth silver skin that shimmered faintly under the suns. Their large black eyes could see in both light and darkness, and their minds were sharp, built for science and calculation. They did not value brute strength. To them, strength was primitive, a tool of animals. Intelligence was the highest weapon. That was why they found their newest companion so strange. The human among them, Captain. Elias Ward stepped down from the shuttle ramp as the alien research team unpacked their equipment. He wore light body armor, a pistol at his hip, and a rifle slung across his back. Compared to the Velari, he was short and broad, with muscle built from years of hard labor and military service. His hair was dark, cut short for practicality, and his eyes carried the calm look of someone who had seen too many battlefields. The Velari scientists whispered among themselves as they watched him. Fragile body mass, one noted, typing into a datapad. Primitive skeletal structure, another added. Limited endurance compared to the herd beasts here. Curious they send one of him. Elias heard the words but said nothing. He was used to being underestimated. Across the galaxy, humans were still new players. Other species saw them as reckless, emotional, and weak, compared to giants like the Krath Warborn or the armored Zern Collective. Humans had not yet proven themselves in the great scale of galactic power. The Velari had hired him not out of respect, but out of practicality. Zephora 4 was dangerous, and their laws required at least one armed escort on scientific missions. Elias was simply filling that role. To them, he was a tool, nothing more. Still, Elias did not mind. He wasn't here for their approval. He was here to do his job. First steps into the wild, the expedition began by setting up camp near a river. The water glowed faintly under the suns, carrying tiny bioluminescent organisms. Trees with broad red leaves hung overhead, their trunks covered in moss that pulsed with light. Elias walked the perimeter while the scientists unpacked their equipment. His boots pressed into soft soil, leaving deep prints. He scanned the tree line carefully. Every instinct told him this place was alive in ways the Velari didn't understand. Behind him, 2 aliens argued over a scanner reading. Seismic patterns suggest something large nearby, said one. Likely just a groundhorn beast, replied the other. They are harmless grazers, Elias paused. Harmless? He doubted anything here was truly harmless. He had fought enough battles on strange worlds to know danger never came when it was expected. Still, he kept silent. The scientists did not like when he interrupted. They valued data over instinct. A lesson in fear by evening, the team moved deeper into the jungle. They wanted to record vocal calls of smaller predators before night fell. Elias walked ahead, rifle ready, but he could feel the aliens' impatience at his caution. Then the forest grew quiet. The humming insects stilled. The birds stopped singing. Even the river seemed to hush, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Elias froze instantly. He knew that silence. It was the silence of a hunter drawing near. The Velari, however, continued talking unaware. One adjusted his scanning lens, muttering about heat signatures. Another knelt to gather soil samples. Stop moving, Elias said firmly, his voice low but sharp. The scientists looked at him, puzzled. Why? We detect nothing. Trust me, Elias replied, his eyes scanning the tree line. Something's out there. And then they heard it. A deep rumbling growl rolled through the jungle, so powerful it vibrated the ground. The trees shivered, leaves trembling loose. A shadow passed across the clearing, massive, hulking, and far too close. The Velari froze. Their black eyes widened in terror. The apex predator reveals itself from the trees stepped a creature unlike anything the Velari had ever seen. It stood nearly 4 times the height of Elias, its scaled body glistening with dark green armor. Its head was broad, jaws filled with teeth like daggers, each longer than Elias's forearm. Claws curved from its forelimbs, sharp enough to shred steel. Its eyes burned yellow, fixed on the group with predatory hunger. The alien scanners beeped wildly. Data filled their screens. Mass, impossible. Muscle density beyond calculation. This must be the devourer. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle. The beast's every movement radiated power. This was no simple predator. This was the apex of Zephora 4, the undisputed ruler of its jungles. The Velari panicked. Retreat! We must retreat. Our weapons cannot penetrate that armor. We must escape, but the path was cut off. The monster blocked the way, its jaws opening to release a roar that shattered branches and sent shockwaves through the clearing. The scientists stumbled back, terror written across their faces. To them, death was certain, and yet Elias did not move. The calm before the storm. The human stood his ground, staring up at the towering predator. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear. Fear was there, yes, but fear was an old companion. Fear sharpened the edges of his thoughts. Fall back, he said quietly, his voice steady. The Velari hesitated, their alien bodies trembling. You cannot fight that thing, one cried. Fall back, Elias repeated, his tone like iron. Now. The aliens obeyed, stumbling toward the rear of the clearing, their black eyes never leaving the monster. Elias rolled his shoulders, loosening his muscles. He looked at the rifle in his hands. Against this beast, the gun would not be enough. Its scales were too thick, its speed too great. He let the rifle drop to the ground. The aliens gasped in disbelief. He abandoned his weapon. Has he lost his mind? But Elias knew what he was doing. This fight would not be won with bullets, this fight would be won with bare hands. The beast prepares to strike. The predator lowered its head, muscles bunching. It sniffed the air, studying its prey. Elias felt its hot breath wash over him, heavy with the stench of blood and decay. The creature growled again, its chest rumbling like thunder. Every instinct in the aliens screamed at them to flee, yet they could not look away. Their fragile minds told them they were about to watch a human be torn apart in seconds. But Elias's eyes did not waver. Come on then, he muttered under his breath. The monster roared and lunged, claws raised to strike. And as the suns dipped lower, casting the jungle in shadows, the aliens realized they were about to witness something they would never forget, something that would shake their understanding of humans forever. The jungle clearing shook as the monster lunged forward. Branches snapped under its weight, and the ground itself seemed to tremble with each step. Its roar rolled through the trees, scattering flocks of strange winged creatures into the sky. The Velari scientists froze in terror. Their slender bodies were not made for combat. They were thinkers, not fighters, and everything in their minds told them this was the end. They clutched their scanners as if numbers and data could protect them. But no reading, no calculation, no formula could explain how they might survive against this towering beast. And then their wide, black eyes shifted toward the human. The human's choice captain, Elias Ward, stood his ground. His rifle lay at his feet, useless against the predator's armored scales. His pistol remained holstered at his hip, untouched. He had already made his choice. His fists clenched and unclenched slowly, loosening muscles, preparing for what was to come. His breathing was steady, controlled, measured. To him, this was just another battle. Different battlefield, different enemy, same truth. Fall back, he ordered again, his voice calm but commanding. The Velari hesitated. Their instincts screamed at them to flee, but they could not understand the human's behavior. To abandon weapons against such a monster seemed madness. You cannot fight this thing barehanded, one scientist cried out, his silver skin quivering with fear. Go, Elias repeated, his eyes never leaving the predator. Something in his voice made them obey. Perhaps it was the steadiness. Perhaps it was the authority. Slowly, shakily, the Velari backed away, their scanners still recording, their minds unwilling to look away from what they were about to witness. The predator's power. The beast circled, its heavy body swaying like a living fortress of muscle and scale. Its claws dragged through the earth, cutting deep grooves into the soil. Its jaws opened wide, releasing another roar that sprayed saliva across the clearing. Every movement radiated strength. Its legs were like tree trunks, its chest broad enough to crush a hovercraft. Its teeth glistened, each sharp enough to slice through bone. The Velari whispered among themselves in horror. It is beyond our records. No predator should be this large, this strong. This is evolution perfected. But to Elias, none of that mattered. Strength was only part of survival. The rest came from will, from instinct, from refusing to break when fear pressed down like a weight. He adjusted his stance, feet planted firmly, his eyes locked with the predator's burning yellow gaze. The first clash. The monster struck first. With a sudden burst of speed that shocked the watching aliens, it lunged forward, claws slicing through the air. The ground shook as it slammed into the space Elias had stood a moment before. But Elias had already moved. He dove to the side, rolling across the soil, the beast's claws tearing into earth where he had been. Dust and debris flew into the air. The Veilari gasped. Their scanners had recorded the predator's speed fast enough to shatter stone. And yet the human had avoided it. Not with technology, not with force, but with simple reflex and awareness. The predator turned, furious at missing its prey. Its tail lashed out, a whip of muscle and bone. Elias ducked low, the tail passing inches above his head. He felt the rush of air, the sting of dust against his face, but he did not falter. He struck back. Testing the beast, Elias darted forward, slamming his fist into the predator's side. His knuckles met armored scales hard as stone. Pain shot through his hand, but he ignored it. He was not expecting to wound, only to test. The predator barely flinched. It turned its massive head and snapped its jaws at him, teeth closing with a sound like cracking stone. Elias twisted away, avoiding death by inches. To the aliens, it looked impossible. A human, so small, so fragile, moving in and out of reach of a monster that could crush him with one step. Why does he not flee? One whispered. Why does he not use his weapon? Asked another. None could answer, but Elias knew. Bullets would bounce. Running would doom them all. The only way was forward. The only way was to face the beast with everything he had. The dance of survival. The clearing became a battlefield. The predator struck again and again, claws tearing through the earth, jaws snapping at the human who dared to defy it. Each attack shook the ground, each strike powerful enough to kill. And yet Elias moved with purpose. He dodged, ducked, rolled, always a step ahead. His body was battered by flying debris. His arms burned with effort, but his focus never wavered. He studied the beast with every motion. He saw the way its right leg favored its weight. He saw the moment its tail always swung after a miss. He saw the brief hesitation when it turned its head too far. He was not just fighting. He was learning. The Veilari saw it too, though they did not understand. To them, this looked like madness, a fragile creature throwing himself into death's jaws. But through their scanners, they noticed patterns. The human's movements were not random. They were precise, calculated, deliberate. He is. Analyzing it, one whispered in awe. He fights as if he has done this before. Another murmured. Close call, the predator roared in frustration. It lunged again, faster this time, claws slashing down. Elias dodged left, but too late. The claws grazed his shoulder, tearing through armor and cutting flesh. Pain shot through him, sharp and burning. He gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out. The aliens gasped in unison. Their scanners reported the injury, red markers flashing across their displays. To them, the human was doomed. A wound like that would slow him, weaken him, leave him vulnerable. But Elias only adjusted his stance. Blood ran down his arm, but his eyes never left the beast. Pain was familiar. Pain was a reminder that he was alive. He spat blood into the dirt and stepped forward again. The turning point. The predator lunged once more, jaws wide, teeth glistening. This time Elias did not dodge. He moved forward. With a burst of speed, he rushed under the beast's head, his shoulder slamming against its jaw. His hands gripped the creature's throat, muscles straining. The predator thrashed, its massive head whipping side to side. Saliva sprayed as its roar shook the clearing, but Elias held on, his arms tightening like steel. The Veilari cried out in shock. He is insane. He will be crushed. But Elias only roared back, a sound raw and human, echoing in defiance. He had found the soft flesh beneath the armored scales of its neck. His grip tightened. He was not just surviving now. He was beginning to fight back. The aliens' horror and awe from the safety of the tree line, the Veilari watched, unable to comprehend. Their scanners filled with impossible data. The human's strength was far beyond their models, his endurance beyond reason. They saw him cling to the predator as it shook the ground, refusing to let go. They saw blood on his arm, dirt across his face, sweat pouring down, but still he fought. They had expected to see a fragile creature torn apart. Instead, they were watching something else entirely. One alien whispered what they all feared to say aloud. If he survives this, if all humans are like him, then what are they? The predator's fury. The monster slammed itself against a tree, trying to crush the human clinging to its neck. The tree snapped in half, crashing to the ground. Dust and splinters filled the air. Elias groaned in pain. His body jolted, but his grip did not break. His muscles screamed, but he held on. The predator thrashed harder, claws tearing the ground, tail smashing through the forest. It was a storm of violence, a living disaster. But for the first time, the beast was not in control. For the first time, the apex predator of Zephora the Four had found prey that would not run. The moment before the end, the clearing was chaos, dust, roars, and the thunder of battle. The aliens huddled together, trembling, their scanners forgotten in their hands. Elias tightened his grip, his breath ragged, his vision blurred from sweat and blood. But deep inside, his will remained unbroken. The predator tried to shake him loose one last time, roaring so loudly that birds fled miles away. Its claws slashed at its own throat, desperate to remove the human tearing into its weakness. But Elias held on, pulling tighter, refusing to yield. The aliens stared in horror and awe, realizing that something extraordinary was happening before their eyes. They were not just watching a human fight a predator, they were watching a human become the predator. The jungle clearing was filled with chaos. Dust swirled in the air, broken trees lay scattered across the ground, and the sound of the predator's furious roars shook the forest like thunder. The alien researchers, the Velari, huddled at the edge of the clearing, their black eyes wide with horror. They had expected the human, Captain Elias Ward, to be dead within seconds. They had expected blood, screaming, and the predator feeding on him as the jungle fell silent again. But what they saw instead was something that defied every law of nature they understood. The predator struggles. The massive beast thrashed wildly, its muscles rippling under thick armor-like scales. Its tail swung like a club, smashing through trees. Its claws dug into the soil, tearing deep trenches as it tried to dislodge the human clinging to its throat. And still Elias held on. His arms were locked tight around the creature's neck, his muscles straining. Every tendon in his body stretched to its limit. Sweat poured down his face, blood dripped from his wounded shoulder, but his grip did not break. The predator slammed itself against another tree, trying to crush him. The tree shattered, splitting down the middle, collapsing in a crash of leaves and branches. Elias grunted in pain, but he refused to let go. The Velari could hardly believe what they were seeing. He is still alive," one whispered. "No, more than alive. He fights it still," another muttered. Their scanners recorded impossible data. Muscle force beyond what should be possible for a human body. Endurance levels that broke their charts. Nothing in their records explained this. Elias fights back at last. Elias shifted his grip. He released one arm and slammed his fist into the softer flesh beneath the predator's jaw. The first punch landed with a dull thud. The second made the beast roar in pain. The third cracked something deep inside its throat. The predator staggered, choking, its roar breaking into a strangled sound. Elias gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain in his own arm. He drove his fist again and again into the same spot, forcing the beast back. His strikes were not random, they were precise, targeted, focused on the one weakness he had found. The Velari flinched with every impact, their sensitive ears picking up the sound of bone cracking and flesh tearing. "Impossible," one whispered. "No weapon, no claws, no tools. And yet," he breaks it with his hands. The beast's rage, the predator's eyes burned with fury. It swung its head violently, throwing Elias into the air. He hit the ground hard, rolling across the dirt, his body aching from the impact. The aliens gasped, certain this was the end. But Elias pushed himself up, blood running down his arm, dust covering his face. He wiped the sweat from his eyes, spat into the dirt, and faced the predator again. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his stance was firm. The predator charged, jaws wide, teeth glinting. Its roar split the air, shaking leaves from the trees. Elias did not run. He did not back away, he ran forward. The Velari screamed in disbelief. "He runs toward it. He seeks death." But Elias knew better. To retreat was to lose. To hesitate was to die. The clash of flesh and will. At the last moment, Elias slid under the predator's snapping jaws. His hand shot upward, gripping its lower jaw with all his strength. His other hand grabbed the upper jaw. With a roar of his own, Elias pulled. Muscles tore, veins bulged. Every fiber of his body burned with effort. The predator thrashed, claws tearing at the ground, but Elias refused to release his grip. The Velari stared in shock. He is trying to break its jaws apart. By force alone? The predator fought, its teeth snapping dangerously close to Elias's face. But slowly, impossibly, its mouth began to open wider. The beast roared in pain as tendons strained under human strength. Elias roared back, a sound primal and raw, a sound that echoed through the jungle. And then, with a tearing crack, he forced the jaws apart. The predator shrieked in agony, its roar broken into a strangled cry. Its head whipped back, its body staggering. The aliens could not comprehend what they were seeing. A man, a fragile human, tearing open the jaws of a monster that had ruled this planet for millennia. The final struggle. The beast thrashed in desperation, slamming Elias against the ground. Pain exploded through his body, but he clung on, refusing to let go. He wrapped one arm around its neck again, the other bracing against its skull. With a deep breath, he shifted his weight, twisted his body, and locked his legs around the creature's throat. The predator roared and roared, but each roar grew weaker. Its claws slashed at the ground, its tail smashed trees, but its movements slowed. The Velari could only watch, their hearts pounding, their minds unable to process the sight. He is killing it. With nothing but his body? This cannot be real. This cannot be real, and yet it was. Elias gritted his teeth, every muscle in his body burning with fire. His vision blurred, his chest heaved. His arm bled freely, but he did not stop. He pulled tighter, tighter, until finally, with a sickening crack, the predator's neck broke. Silence. The jungle fell silent. The predator's body collapsed, shaking the ground as it hit the soil. Dust rose in a cloud around it. The massive beast, once the king of Zephora IV, lay still and broken. Elias staggered to his feet, breathing hard, his body trembling from exhaustion. Sweat and blood covered him, his muscles screamed in pain, but his eyes were steady. He looked down at the predator's body for a long moment, then spat again into the dirt. "It's done," he muttered softly. The Velari scientists did not move. They could not. Their eyes were locked on the human, their minds frozen between terror and awe. The alien's realization. Finally, one whispered, voice shaking. He killed it, with nothing but his hands. Another dropped his scanner, his thin fingers trembling. This is not possible. No species should have such strength, such will. A third shivered visibly, his silver skin pale in the fading light. What if all humans are like this? The thought spread through them like wildfire. Until now, humans were a minor species in the galactic stage, underestimated, dismissed, even mocked. But what they had just witnessed changed everything. This was not technology. This was not strategy. This was raw, primal power. A single human had faced the apex predator of Zephora IV, and won. Elias's Comelius walked back toward the aliens slowly, his steps heavy with exhaustion. He bent down, picked up his rifle from the ground, and slung it across his back again. The aliens shrank back instinctively as he approached, their black eyes wide with fear. But Elias only sat down on a broken log, breathing heavily. He pulled a piece of cloth from his pack and began wrapping his bleeding shoulder with calm, practiced movements. He did not boast. He did not explain. He did not look for thanks. To him, this was simply survival. Another day, another battle, another predator defeated. Finally, he looked up at the silent aliens. His voice was quiet but steady. "Set up camp," he said. "Night's coming. We'll need a fire." The Velari exchanged nervous glances. Not one dared to argue. The predator's shadow as the suns dipped below the horizon, shadows filled the jungle. Strange cries echoed in the distance, the sounds of other predators moving through the dark, but none approached the clearing. The scent of blood was thick in the air, the body of the fallen predator lying broken on the ground, and yet the lesser creatures stayed away as if they knew something greater now ruled this space. The Velari huddled close together, still trembling from what they had seen. Their scanners continued to blink with unreadable data, their minds filled with questions they could not answer. But Elias only sat by the fire, his eyes watchful, his body still and calm. For the first time, the aliens began to realize that perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps humans were not fragile. Perhaps humans were something else entirely. The whisper of fear. That night, as the jungle sang its eerie music, one of the Velari spoke quietly to the others. "We must record this. The Dominion must know what we have seen." Another shivered. "But if they know, if they all know what humans can do, what then?" Silence followed his words. None dared to answer because deep in their hearts they all knew the truth. If one human could do this, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The jungle was quiet again. For hours before, the air had been filled with roars, the sound of claws tearing earth and the crash of trees falling under the predator's fury. Now only silence remained, broken only by the soft crackle of a fire that Elias Ward had built. The apex predator's body still lay where it had fallen, a massive shape half hidden in shadows. Its scales glistened in the firelight, broken and cracked. Its eyes, once glowing yellow with hunger, were now lifeless, staring into the night sky. For the Velari scientists, the sight was too much to process. Shock at the fire. The aliens huddled together near the flames, their tall, slender bodies trembling. Their smooth silver skin shimmered faintly in the firelight, but their faces were pale with fear. One of them, researcher Velran, stared at Elias for a long time before whispering. He killed it. He killed the devourer with his hands. Another Sarah shook her head quickly. No, this cannot be. Our record said no weapon has ever pierced its scales. No trap has ever held it. And yet, she glanced at Elias, who sat calmly across the fire, tying cloth around his bleeding shoulder. He ended it without tools. A third scientist, Kaleth, lifted his scanner with trembling fingers. The device still displayed the impossible readings it had recorded during the fight. The data says he exerted forces beyond human limits. His muscles should have torn themselves apart. His bones should have snapped under the strain, yet he did not break. The three of them looked at each other, their black eyes wide with confusion and dread. And all the while, Elias sat silent, feeding dry branches into the fire. The humans calm to Elias. This was routine. He had fought before, bled before, and survived worse odds than this. His body hurt, yes. His shoulder throbbed with pain. His arms ached from strain, and every breath burned. But to him, this was simply the price of living another day. He did not speak of his pain. He did not explain himself. He just worked in silence, wrapping his wounds with calm, practiced hands. The aliens stared at him as if he were something unnatural. To them, a creature who could wrestle and kill an apex predator barehanded should be loud, violent, perhaps even proud. Yet Elias showed no pride. He did not even celebrate. Instead, he sat quietly by the fire, his eyes scanning the jungle with the calm alertness of a soldier. This unsettled the Velari more than the battle itself. The whisper of fear hours passed. The jungle began to breathe again. Strange insects hummed. Distant calls of night creatures echoed between the trees. Yet the clearing itself remained untouched. No predator dared approach the fallen body of the devourer. Finally, Velran broke the silence. "What are humans, truly?" he whispered. Sarah shook her head. "We thought them simple, weak. They are not the Krath with their armored bodies. They are not the Zern with their thick hides. We thought them fragile." Kaleth leaned closer, his voice tight. "What if fragility is a lie? What if beneath their skin lies something else?" Velran's long fingers trembled. "If all humans can do what we saw tonight, then no species in the galaxy is safe from them." The words hung in the air like smoke. None of them wanted to believe it, but none could deny it. The data Kaleth clutched his scanner, reviewing the fight frame by frame. He replayed the moment Elias had torn open the predator's jaws. The readings of force, endurance, and reflex speed blinked in red, far above expected human averages. "It makes no sense," Kaleth muttered. "Humans are not supposed to endure this. Their bodies should fail. They should collapse from exhaustion." Sarah's black eyes glistened in the firelight, and yet he did not. Velran spoke softly, almost fearfully. "Maybe it is not the body. Maybe it is the will." The others looked at him in confusion. Velran continued. "We rely on numbers, on technology, on calculations. When danger comes, we flee. But this human, he did not flee. Even when death stood before him, even when his body bled, he did not stop. His will carried him where no science said he should go." The aliens fell silent, struck by the truth of his words. The human's perspective Elias finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "You three are whispering too loud. Predators here fear." The Velari flinched. Elias did not look at them. His eyes remained on the jungle. That thing was not the last. Where there's one predator, there are more. If you want to live through this night, get some rest. I'll keep watch. The scientist looked at him with disbelief. After what he had just done, how could he sit awake, keeping guard as if nothing had changed? Sarah gathered her courage to ask, "Human, why did you not use your weapons? Why fight it with your body?" Elias's expression did not change. He pulled a coal from the fire with a stick, crushing it into the dirt before answering. "Because weapons fail. Ammunition runs out, metal breaks. But if your hands can do the job, then you'll never be unarmed." The simplicity of the answer shook the aliens even more than the act itself. To them, survival was about tools, machines, and science. To this human, survival was something deeper, something in the blood, something that could not be measured. The long night. The Velari tried to rest, but sleep would not come easily. Their minds replayed the battle again and again. The image of Elias tearing apart the predator burned into their memory. They whispered quietly to each other in their alien tongue, thinking the human could not understand. Perhaps he is not like other humans. Perhaps he is a rare one, an exception. But what if he is not? Elias, sitting at the edge of the firelight with his rifle across his lap, heard every word. He did not react. He had heard the same doubts on many worlds before. To him it was all the same. He scanned the shadows patiently, watching for movement, his ears alert to every sound. The jungle was alive, but nothing dared step into the clearing. Not after what had happened here. The dawn, when morning came, the light of the twin suns poured through the trees. The mist of HFY glowed in gold and silver. Birds called again, filling the air with music. The Velari rose slowly, their bodies stiff from fear and poor sleep. Their eyes went first to the predator's corpse. It still lay there, unmoved, a reminder of what had happened. Elias stood already, rolling his shoulders, testing his injured arm. His movements were careful but steady. "We move," he said simply. The aliens hesitated. "Move, but we must study, record," Sarah began. Elias cut her off with a look. His calm, steady eyes silenced her. That roar carried far. "Others will come. This place is no longer safe." The scientists exchanged nervous glances. They had survived only because of him. Now, without argument, they obeyed. Whispers in the jungle. As the group packed their gear, they noticed something strange. The jungle seemed quieter around them. Not silent like before, but cautious. Smaller creatures kept their distance. Predators lurked in the distance but did not approach. It was as if the jungle itself had recognized a new apex. Caliph whispered what they were all thinking. "The beasts. They avoid us now. Not us. Him." Velrin nodded slowly. "The jungle knows. The predator fell and the human stands. Nature itself recognizes the change." The thought sent a shiver through them. The fear of revelation as they marched deeper into the forest. Sarah spoke in a hushed tone. "This must be recorded. The Dominion must know the truth of humans." Velrin frowned. "And what if the Dominion fears them? What if they decide humanity must be contained before it spreads?" Caliph looked back at Elias, who walked ahead with quiet steps, scanning the trees. "Or what if they decide humans must be honored? Protected? Perhaps allied?" The three fell silent again. The question was too large for them to answer. All they knew was that the galaxy would not remain the same if the truth of this night spread. The human alone. That evening, they made camp again beside a ridge. Elias climbed to the highest rock, scanning the horizon as the sun set. The scientists stayed below, recording data, whispering about their fear, their awe, their doubts. Elias stood apart, silent as always. He looked out across the endless jungle, his expression unreadable. He was only one man, one human among many, yet he knew what they were thinking. He had seen it before, the moment when aliens realized humanity was not weak. He did not seek their fear. He did not need their respect. Survival was enough. Still, he could not help but wonder how long the secret would last. The question left hanging that night. As the stars shone above HFY, Sarah asked the question none of them wanted to speak. What happens if humanity chooses not to be ignored anymore? No one answered. The fire crackled. The jungle whispered. And across the flames, Elias Ward sat silent, sharpening a blade with slow, careful strokes as if preparing for the battles yet to come. The jungle of HFY was quiet now. The only sound was the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant calls of night birds as the twin suns rose over the horizon. The clearing where the apex predator had fallen remained untouched. Its massive body, once the terror of the planet, lay broken among the shattered trees, a testament to the struggle that had unfolded only hours earlier. Captain Elias Ward stood at the edge of the clearing, looking out across the jungle. His body ached, every muscle burning from the previous night's battle. His arm throbbed from the injury, his shoulders were stiff, and a faint trickle of blood stained his clothing. And yet he felt alive, more than alive, victorious. The Velari scientists approached cautiously, their silver skin still shimmering from fear and awe. For them, Elias was no longer just a human. He was a force beyond comprehension, a living example of something that defied their understanding. The journey backpacking their gear, the team moved cautiously through the dense jungle. Smaller predators avoided them, instinctively respecting or fearing the presence of the human who had toppled the apex predator. The Velari whispered among themselves constantly. "Do you think he is normal?" Sarah asked, her voice low. Velran shook his head. "He fights as no human should fight. No species should be able to match that predator, let alone destroy it. Kaleth's voice was almost reverent. It is more than strength. It is the will, the determination, the refusal to break. Elias overheard their conversation but did not respond. To him, this was all simple logic. The predator had threatened life and he had acted. Tools were secondary. Instinct was primary. The jungle had taught him that over decades of survival. And still, the aliens could not stop staring at him. The reporting begins. Once the team returned to their shuttle, the Velari immediately transmitted the data back to the Velari Dominion. Every frame of the battle was sent. Every measurement, every anomaly. The higher authorities initially reacted with disbelief. Humans, fragile bipeds with short lifespans compared to most galactic species, could not possibly destroy an apex predator barehanded. Yet the footage was clear. The data was undeniable. The Dominion held emergency meetings. Scholars, military leaders, and historians debated for days. What did this mean? Could humans really possess strength and resilience far beyond what was previously believed? Were they allies or potential threats? The footage of Elias's fight was classified, yet leaks inevitably occurred. Across the galaxy, species began whispering about the human who tore apart a predator with his bare hands. Galactic reactions everywhere. The response was the same. Fear, disbelief, awe. The Zern Collective, known for their massive armored warriors, reviewed the footage. Their generals shook their heads. If one human can do this, imagine 100 trained soldiers. Imagine a fleet of humans. The Krath Warborn, creatures who prided themselves on brute strength, were stunned. Our strongest predators would fall to them? One chieftain asked, unable to hide his fear. Neutral scientists from various star systems called it an evolutionary anomaly. Some theorized the human was unique. Others worried the species as a whole might be underestimated. The message was clear across the stars. Humanity could not be ignored. Elias's quiet life, back on Zyphora IV. Elias prepared the team's equipment for transport. The predator's body was left behind, a natural marker of dominance. He did not celebrate, did not boast. To him, survival was simple. Assess the threat, act decisively, live to fight another day. The Velari watched him, still struggling to reconcile what they had witnessed. One of them, Velrin, finally spoke. "Captain Ward, why do you not revel in this? You have done something no other species could do." Elias looked at him calmly, tying a final knot around a rope. "Because it does not matter. The fight is over. I survived. That is all that matters." The aliens exchanged glances. Their fear had not diminished, but it had grown into something else. Respect. The reputation of humans grows months later. Word of Elias's fight spread across the galaxy. Even without his name, the story of a human tearing apart an apex predator became legendary. Humans, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, were now subjects of careful study. Military strategists revised their war doctrines. Scientists added new parameters to their physical models of humans. Political leaders considered whether humans should be treated as allies or feared as potential rivals. Elias, of course, was unaware of most of this. He continued his work, traveling from world to world, surviving, fighting, and learning. Yet wherever he went, whispers followed. The species that kills with bare hands. Do not underestimate a human. Their strength lies not in weapons, but in will. For humans, these whispers did not reach the ears of everyone immediately. But in time, the stories built a reputation stronger than any fleet, stronger than any technology. Lessons for the galaxy. The Dominion, initially skeptical, studied the footage for months. Military analysts realized something profound. Humans were unpredictable. Where other species relied on strength, numbers, or technology, humans combined all three with sheer willpower and adaptability. Strategists revised simulations. Even a small human squad could defeat predators and enemies previously considered unbeatable. Humans were no longer just a minor species. They had potential to influence galactic power dynamics. Yet the analysts also recognized a challenge. Humans could not be fully understood. They were wild, resourceful, and above all resilient in ways no machine or formula could predict. The symbol of human potential. For the Velari, the memory of that night became symbolic. Elias Ward became a legend, even within their scientific community. He was not a hero in the traditional sense. He did not seek fame. He was a survivor, a human, and yet he represented something larger. A species that could endure the impossible. face predators without fear, and emerge victorious. Whenever Valari scholars taught new students about potential and adaptation, they showed the footage. They discussed human resilience and the power of determination. They warned that underestimating humans was a mistake no intelligent species could afford. Across the galaxy, the reputation of humanity shifted forever. The jungle responds back on Zephora 4, life slowly returned to normal. Smaller predators resumed their activities. Plants grew in the shadow of fallen trees, and the river flowed calmly as if nothing had happened. But the jungle had changed. The apex predator's reign was over. The other creatures instinctively avoided the human and his team, recognizing that a new force now ruled these woods. Elias walked through the clearing one last time, touching the rough bark of a broken tree. He felt no pride, just satisfaction that he had survived and that the team remained safe. To the jungle, he was a threat. To the aliens, he was a mystery. To the galaxy, he was a legend in the making. The human's nature, Elias never sought recognition. He never demanded respect. He had no illusions about being special. To him, the galaxy was a dangerous place. Every predator, every conflict, every mission required focus, quick thinking, and courage. Strength alone was meaningless without will, determination, and awareness. And yet the galaxy had begun to notice. Stories of his actions traveled faster than ships. Species whispered about humans in fear and awe. Alliances reconsidered, armies recalculated, and even the most powerful predators and warriors paused when they heard the words, "The human who tore apart the apex predator with his bare hands." The future awaits as the sun set again over Zephora 4. Elias sat by a small fire, sharpening a simple blade. His thoughts were not on fame or fear or respect. They were on tomorrow, on survival, on the next challenge, on the next predator. The Valari watched from a distance, recording data and taking notes, still trying to understand what they had witnessed. Their fear had not fully faded, but it had grown into awe. The galaxy far beyond the jungle had already begun to change. The underestimation of humanity had ended. From this day forward, every species, every strategist, every predator, and every warrior would pause before dismissing humans. Elias did not care about any of that, but the universe would remember. Because one human had faced the impossible and had won. And from that day forward, humanity's reputation would never be the same.